For many of us, the beginning of November means dealing with 5 to 6 months of winter, or perhaps counting the days until winter holiday break. But for many, November means so much more. November is National Adoption Month. Since the then governor of Massachusetts, Mike Dukakis, proclaimed the first week of November as Adoption Week back in the 70s, states and countries around the world have, for a lack of a better word, adopted November as the month to bring awareness to the impact adoption has on families and to dismantle some of the myths around adoption for both adoptive parents and what adoption means for birth parents. Joining me here in the Classic 107 studio to talk about National Adoption Month, I am joined by Dawn Warkentin, who is the Executive Director of Adoption Options Manitoba. Hi, Dawn.
Hi.
Nice to have you here.
Hi, Chris. Nice to have you. Nice to be here.
So November is National Adoption Month. How long has it been celebrated here in Manitoba, and how long have you been associated with Adoption Options?
Well, it was proclaimed a few years ago, and so we have been trying to promote it for a few years in November. I've been associated with Adoption Options for 25 years. I've been there for a while, started out as a volunteer, then an adoption counselor, then worked my way up, and I'm the director now. So,
Wow, quite an association. The month is meant to answer questions and bring awareness to the issues surrounding adoption. Can you talk about some of the myths that you most frequently come across when you are talking to birth mothers or prospective adoptive parents?
Yes, definitely one of the myths is that, or one of the stigmas, I guess, is around birth parents. A lot of people feel like, birth parents are just trying to kind of get rid of their responsibilities and that sort of thing, and don't really want to parent. But the birth parents that we work with, they just have so much strength and courage and so much love for their child. And this decision that they make is such a difficult one, and it's completely made out of love. And I think that's one of the things that I want people to understand, is that they're not giving away a child. They're placing a child. They're finding the best parents they can and providing the life for the child that they can't provide themselves. So I think that's one of them. And adoption is just, because of that, there's a lot of loss involved in adoption as well. There are a lot of joys as well. But I think with open adoption, I think there are so many benefits for all parts of the adoption triad. For adoptees who get to be part of both families and to know they're loved and that they're wanted. And for adoptive parents to be able to have access to the medical records and definitely for birth parents to just know that the child is doing well and is loved.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things, when I think of adoption, and it's part of I grew up in the 70s and early 80s, you think of the grief-stricken mother who's doing the hardest thing, giving away their child and never seeing them again. But it doesn't have to be that way, right? Can you talk more about open adoption and the benefits for both parties?
Absolutely. So, yeah, it doesn't have to be that way. And that's what we are based on, open adoption. And so we really believe that to be the best for all parties when it's safe to do so. So yeah, with birth parents, they're able to give us criteria of what they're looking for in a family. And they're able to choose the family that they want to place with and then meet them to make sure they're the right family, right? And that they're okay. Then when the child is placed in the home, then birth parents are able to have ongoing contacts. So that would mean that they would often visit 1 to 4 times a year, would be getting updates about the child. There are some birth parents who will, go to their hockey games or even babysit. That's just based on a relationship, though. I mean, it sounds a little bit scary sometimes for people who don't understand. And for adoptive parents, I think sometimes going into it, you think, oh, this person is coming. I don't know how to be around that person. But once they place that child in your arms, and it's something that you've been longing for many years, you realize what a gift that is. And in that sense, you realize you want this person in your life, right? Why wouldn't I want my child to feel loved by more people? And so I think that's where open adoption that's the heart of it. And so we really, and sometimes, and so yeah, we help facilitate all of that and support everybody along the way. But mainly it turns into a relationship between birth parents, the adoptee, and the adoptive parents that looks a little bit more like extended family, where birth parents their motivation is just to know the child's doing well and that the child knows that they love them. It's not to be a second parent, not a second set. They're not coming to make decisions. They've chosen that, right?
Yeah.
And so they just want to be a part of that child's life as well.
So hypothetical, my wife and I are planning to adopt. How long does it take to become a possible adoptive parent? Can you talk through some of the steps that involved in becoming an adoptive parent?
Yes. So it can take 6 months. It could take a year. Some depends on how quickly you as a couple do things. The first step usually is coming to our free information night. You register on our website, and we have them about every 6 weeks. It's just an hour. It's on Zoom. You're anonymous. You can just go get the information. And so you can get all the information. You'd have, moving forward, you'd have an interview with me just to get some more information. And then we have education seminars for adoptive parents every 3 times a year. And so those are a whole weekend. It's a lot of information, but we want to make sure everybody's prepared. And so we talk about attachment and transracial and cross-cultural adoption, especially if you're adopting a child of a different cultural background than yourself. How do you connect the child to that culture? And just a lot of stuff like that in that education. And then families will fill out a lot of paperwork. Just like everything else, adoption has a lot of paperwork, and you complete that and then start your home study. So a home study can take 4 or 5 months. And then that is with a social worker. It's an assessment. It's a lot of interviews, 4 or 5 interviews, just to determine if the family is suitable, capable, and willing to be an adoptive parent. And it's just going to be a safe place for this child. So that is what they need to do to kind of get ready and active. And so once they're approved, so that whole thing can take 6 months, probably at the least, and then as long as it needs. Some people come to us and are ready to start right away. Some people are looking at other options too. So, and then they're waiting. And then there's not really a good way to determine how long somebody will wait because it's based on our matching process.
Yeah. So there's and then of course there's the other side of the thing, the birth parents. When mothers come to you, what kinds of things does Adoption Options deal with? My understanding is you're highly supportive of the birth mother. Just because somebody is visiting Adoption Options, it doesn't mean that they have to give away their child for adoption, right?
Oh, absolutely. We're based on education, so we really just want people to make the decision that's best for them, and informed decisions. So the things we'll talk about with birth parents, we definitely will make sure they understand, you can go through our whole process and not place your child for adoption and decide to parent, and, that can be a good decision. So it would be looking at options, is there somebody in your family you would want to raise the child, or would you want to place for adoption within your community? And then what is parenting actually going to look like? Do you have people to support you, or are there people you haven't thought of that maybe could help? And so there's options, decision making. We'll also get some medical information from them for the child to have. And then we'll also talk to them about the grieving process, because as we mentioned, there's a lot of loss involved for birth parents and for everybody involved. But just to kind of prepare them for what they're going to experience along the way, and to find out how best we can support them as counselors and do that grief counseling with them along the way. And then also work with them on looking at what kind of family they're hoping for, if they want a family with a particular religious background.
Yeah, I was going to ask about this.
Yes.
So birth parents they can make choices as to how the child is raised and in what kind of a family, right?
Yeah, so they can choose the family, and so the information that they are able to look at is like a letter that families have written that gives a good synopsis about who they are, and there's pictures as well. And they can also look at some other information as a part of the family's file that would talk about how they plan to raise children, about their relationship, about who they are. And so they get a really good picture of who these adoptive parents are. So yeah, they give us that information. They can say if they were looking for a particular age of family or where they live in Manitoba.
Yeah.
All of our families are from Manitoba, but so yeah, they definitely are able to do that, and they aren't able to kind of make parenting decisions down the road, but they make the important one of who is going to do that, and also know their philosophy around parenting.
I understand that on Saturday, Adoption Options has a fundraising event that's kicking off for November being Adoption Month. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, this is our biggest fundraiser, and this will be at Canada's Polo Park. It's a trivia night, dinner and trivia night. It's just so much fun. We have a trivia master who has adopted through us. He makes it a lot of fun. We also usually have a speaker who has been impacted by adoption in one way or another and can tell their story. And I think that really touches people. And I'm looking forward to that this year as well. We also we'll have a player's choice auction, silent auction, 50-50, grand prize. So there's a lot of things going on. And it's just a night to celebrate. It is a fundraiser, but we also find that there's not a lot of opportunity to celebrate adoption. And so that's what we want to do as well, is just lift those up. We have a slideshow of all of the placements that have happened in the last year. And it's just a really good night to get together and celebrate adoption.
And for our listeners, Adoption Options is it's a nonprofit, right? It's completely nonprofit, which leads to the next question. One of the things I found so amazing is that Adoption Options, it's fully licensed. You operate under the Adoption Act of Manitoba, and there is no public funding.
Right.
None. You are a nonprofit in the truest sense of the word. I thought you would fit under the umbrella of Child and Family Services. Are all adoption agencies in Manitoba run through donations? How does that work?
Well, so we have, there are only 2 adoption agencies in Manitoba. We're both not-for-profit, and we are able to charge fees for services from adoptive parents. So birth parents who are coming through us do not pay any fees. They can go through an adoption without that burden. But the adoptive parents do pay some fees for the services. Those are regulated by the province. We are licensed by the province of Manitoba. And so that's where we are able to get some funding. But then we do have birth parents who come through our agency and they decide to parent, which is great. And so that's what's good for them. And so that's part of our charity. So we're not-for-profit and charity where we do a lot of that work and we aren't funded for it, right? And so yeah, that's... but we are able to accept donations, and that is a large part of also what we need to do to be able to survive. So.
And can you tell our listeners, if they do want to donate to Adoption Options, where can they go to submit a donation? And they'll get a tax receipt along with that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We do have the option to just call in a donation. People can also sometimes donate through their workplaces or through United Way. We also, through Canada Helps, we can accept donations. That's how everything is set up for our fundraiser. And those can be one-time donations or even monthly donations. Some people just like to do that automatically, right?
Yeah.
And it's a little bit, so there's lots of different ways. And if anybody has a question, they can always contact us either through email from the website or call us, give us a call, and we can let them know too.
Perfect. I'm going to wrap up the conversation by asking, what do you find most rewarding about working for Adoption Options? And for you, what does a good day at work look like for you?
Oh, that's interesting. I know the most rewarding actually is walking alongside birth parents who are making such an important decision for their child, whether they place or whether they parent. They are thoroughly thinking it through and just seeing the love that's in their faces and doing those placements where the adoptive parents are meeting the child for the first time, and that also, even though birth parents are going through a loss and grieving, that's what they're looking for. They want somebody to love their child as much as they do. And so that, for me, is the best part. Also, just kind of being able to make a difference, like I said, and support birth parents through their process. A good day. That's hard. Every day is different. It's good to kind of be busy and to when we have adoptive parents bring in babies for visits and or somebody comes in. Our speaker this year is a birth mom who placed 17 years ago. And she just came back out of the blue a little while ago. And it was so great to be able to see her and see where she's at now and just know that you made a difference, right? And
yeah, it sounds fantastic. Dawn, this has just been amazing. Thanks for taking the time to stop by and tell us about adoption options and National Adoption Month. For our Classic 107 listeners, if you go to classic107.com, I've written an article about all the wonderful things that Adoption Options does. And in the article, I have embedded a direct link to their website where you can find out more answers to your adoption questions and perhaps even donate. Dawn, thanks again.
thank you so much.